Escaping the West and moving abroad might be a frightening prospect for many of you. There are a great number of reasons why you would want to get out as soon as possible, such as an untenable economic welfare system based on debt, political polarization and civil unrest, mass immigration of barbarism, the death of civil liberties, the emasculation of society, increased surveillance, global warmongering, dysfunctional prison systems, a misanthropic legal system, impending theocracies, heavy taxes, and an increasing cost of living. I've covered these in detail in other videos, so check those out if you're interested. Today, I'll approach the topic from another angle and talk about several things you can gain by moving to another non-Western nation. Many of those are of course dependent on your current situation. If you're moving from Hickville, Alabama to Tokyo, Japan, you'll probably not decrease your cost of living. And if you like snow and cold weather, you won't see an upgrade in your life upon moving from Norway to Thailand. However, in general, you'll be able to improve your current situation in just about every regard by moving abroad. In which aspects and to what degree depends on you. And of course, you also have to take into account an almost certain decrease in the negative factors I've just mentioned. Without further ado, here are 6 benefits of moving abroad. The most important thing you can gain from moving to another non-Western country is more personal freedom on nearly every level. This might come as a surprise to you, especially if you're an American, but the Western world is definitely not free. Yes, you have more apparent civil liberties than in, say, Russia, North Korea, or Afghanistan, but these aren't countries you'd want to move to anyway, so they aren't viable comparisons. At this point in time, regardless of which Western country you live in, you are generally less free now than people have been in most of the history of the West. I know this sounds absurd, but it's true. The current United States government is the biggest and most encompassing government that has ever existed, both absolutely and relatively. It has far more power and control over its citizens than any other totalitarian regime, kings or emperors in the past could have even dreamed of. And it isn't shy about abusing this power either. The same can be said about governments of other Western nations, but to a lesser degree for now. And the saddest part is that most Westerners do not even realize this, because they have grown accustomed to the insane amount of regulations and laws that determine everything they can and cannot do. Millions upon millions of laws dictate how you and I should and can live. And if we do not follow them, we are fined, punished, imprisoned, and sometimes even killed by the same people we fund with our taxes, with our work. I'll go over a few examples now. You might agree or disagree with these laws or with their premise of being for the greater good, but that's not the point here. The point is that they restrict the freedom of citizens. In the US and many other countries, you cannot legally pay another consenting adult for sex. An adult human being cannot take any drugs he or she wants to, only those that are allowed and taxed by the government. You have to build your own house according to strict regulations, and if you want to improve your property, you have to get permission from the government. In most countries, you cannot say what you want anymore. You can get thrown in jail, fired, fined, or publicly shamed for your opinion or choice of words, even if this happened decades ago. You cannot walk around naked on your own property if outsiders can see. If you enter into a marriage like a love-struck idiot, you aren't allowed to legally separate unless the government approves of it. In many countries, you are forced to vote in pointless elections. You cannot name your child whatever you want. You and your children have to go to school until you reach a certain age or set up some sort of other educational scheme. You have to wear helmets and seatbelts. In some countries, you could get drafted and forced to fight and die in wars you may not approve of. And of course, you have to pay heavy taxes on nearly every aspect of your life, because if you don't, men with guns will come to your door and you'll go to prison. Every year, more and more of these restrictions are introduced and enforced by the threat of violence. And again, your opinion on the validity of these restrictions isn't the point. I might agree with the fact that people have to wear seatbelts in their cars, but that doesn't change the fact that it chips away at the personal freedom and the power of personal choice of citizens. Oh, and all of this was true before the previous pandemic gave governments the opportunity to impose even more rules on their populations. And in its wake, even more restrictions will be implemented for the good of the people. The overarching point here is that every single aspect of your life is tightly regulated, and personal freedom in the West is a massive illusion. You'd be hard pressed to find something that you can or cannot do about which there isn't some sort of law or restriction. Now, at this point, you might be wondering about two things. If the lack of personal freedom is such a massive issue, why did I not include it as a reason for why the West is collapsing? The answer is very simple. Because a lack of personal freedom for citizens is not a problem for governments or nations. In fact, the tighter citizens are controlled and regulated, the stronger a government gets. It's only a problem for citizens on an individual basis. Is it any better in other countries though? This is a rather common point of view and one that gets pointed out to me a lot. Surely it isn't any better in second and third world countries? Surely they limit freedom even more? The answer here is that in almost every single case, this is not so.
No way! Yes way!
Yes, I realize this is counterintuitive and goes against what you've been taught since you were young, what you've seen in media and so on. In most inferior countries, inferior only from the biased and uneducated point of view of an average Westerner, your personal freedom usually goes up because there are fewer rules and laws dictating your day-to-day life. On the surface, this might not be apparent, especially if you've never spent any significant time abroad. On a macro level, it might seem you are more restricted in, say, Thailand or the Philippines. In the former, you cannot insult the king, and in the latter, all drugs are illegal, except, of course, those that the government can tax and thus allows. However, if you have no interest in insulting the king or doing drugs, living in those countries comes with a definite upside of having way more freedom in what you can and cannot do on a daily basis. Yes, there are some laws of some countries which will restrict your freedom more than it would be in the West in a specific area, but in many more other areas, the opposite will be true. You might not agree with things a specific government does or dictates, but as long as it does not affect you personally, why would you care? The key here is moving to a country where the specifically harsh laws do not affect you, so you can take advantage of the increased freedom their lack of other laws provides. That is the most important difference between the false concept of personal freedom in the West and actual personal freedom abroad. Laws dictating every part of your life versus laws dictating some very specific parts of your life. No country is perfect. Let me repeat that. I've talked about this in more detail in my video. Every country sucks. It's just a matter of finding the country that sucks the least for you personally. If you're unhappy with who you are in your country or how people perceive you, moving abroad gives you the opportunity to completely reinvent yourself in a different environment. A fresh start, a new beginning, where you can be who you want to be instead of what your nation of birth has pressed upon you. If you're dissatisfied with the men or women in your country in general, or just want to experience something else, moving abroad is a great option. Different sexual tastes can be problematic or at least frowned upon in your own country, but it might not be elsewhere. For example, if you're an older guy who likes to date multiple 18-year-old men or women, you'll likely draw looks and comments in the West. In Asia, this is commonplace and nobody cares. Or this could be as simple as being really into Latina women but living in Norway, where the supply of such is pretty low, or totally digging Asian men while living in France. You really open up a lot more avenues of sexual and romantic success and happiness by moving to a country where what you like is available in abundance instead of being limited. Not only will you have a larger supply to choose from, you will also encounter fewer problems while dating because your prospects know there are thousands of similar opportunities just like them available to you. Moving on to the business side of things, in most countries, it is much easier to open a business than it is in many Western nations. So if you want to start your own company or hire employees, you can definitely do so much easier and cheaper abroad. And don't forget, you'll almost always be taxed a lot less too, so your income is worth even more. This means you have an excess budget available to spend as you see fit on things that might have been out of your reach in the West. This could be anything from eating a different kind of food, renting a boat, getting plastic surgery, or organizing a 10-way with a bunch of prostitutes, to using some weird kind of drug, or living in a villa for the same amount of money you'd spend on a one-bedroom apartment in New York. Honestly, the opportunities which open up to you upon leaving the shackles of the West behind are nearly endless. And that's not even considering all the more normal stuff that you could also do in your home country, but were afraid to indulge in out of fear for the reactions of your family and friends. Moving abroad is generally accompanied by a cheaper way of living. As I've mentioned plenty of times by now, inflation and rising cost of living are a serious problem in the West, causing misery, homelessness, general poverty, and an increased dependability on the welfare state. If you move to a region such as Southeast Asia or Latin America, your monthly costs can easily be cut in half, while simultaneously allowing you to achieve a higher standard of living. A while back, I was living in a 4-bedroom house in Asia, and I paid around $400 in rent. And this was in a reasonably big city with millions of inhabitants, not somewhere out in the boondocks. If you were to move to some smaller town, an island in Thailand, or somewhere in the mountains of South America, your costs would be even lower. Utilities and groceries and so on follow a similar pattern, and it's pretty rare to find something that is similarly priced as it would be in the West. In addition, you'd get access to many exotic fruits and vegetables you might not even have heard of. You are fully able to get all the first world amenities you want in non-Western countries at a much lower cost and at similar, if not often better, quality. For example, where I live, a half-hour taxi drive will set me back a few dollars at most. My monthly water bill rarely goes over $8. Renting a moving truck plus labor to help me move all my stuff across town was less than $40. A modern, state-of-the-art gym in an air-conditioned mall comes with a monthly fee of around $20. Having a dental or other medical chip is also around $20. Healthcare might be a hot topic for you if you're older, but if you're worried about not getting the care you need, I haven't been to any non-Western country where you couldn't get top-notch healthcare at a much lower price. I could go on, giving you hundreds of real examples of how cheap living abroad can get, but I hope you see my point. Now, it's important to emphasize that cheaper does not usually mean inferior. Sometimes it does, and that's when you'll have to pay a bit more to get the same quality of goods as in the West, but still at a lower price overall. In addition, you can often benefit from services that are currently not available in the West. For example, in many countries, you can get someone to come to your door, pick up your laundry, and bring it back cleaned and ironed the next day for a few dollars. The same goes for having your entire house cleaned for that price, or getting a massage in your condo, and so on. In summation, if you want to live a good and carefree life with an average Western salary, you cannot do that in the West anymore, but you can certainly live it up in Asia, South America, and other similar regions. There are, of course, plenty of countries which have a comparable or even higher cost of living as most Western nations, such as Singapore, Dubai, or Japan. And so, if a lower cost of living is important for you, you just include it in your parameters and do not consider such countries to be viable for you at this time. As a citizen or resident of a Western nation, you are taxed extremely heavily. It's not uncommon for an average employee to have to give up half or more of his or her paycheck to the government through all sorts of taxes, visible or hidden. Moving abroad fixes a lot of that, depending on some factors. If you move abroad but keep your legal residence in your Western nation, you will continue to be taxed, often at a lesser rate, but still. If you're an American citizen, you'll continue to get taxed even if you put your legal residence elsewhere, the de facto only country in the world with such a ridiculous system. If you keep your business in a Western nation or work an online job for a Western company, you will continue to be taxed. If you set up a business in the country you move to, you will often, but certainly not always, be taxed there. Now, there are a number of ways you can go about lowering your taxes as much as possible. I do not know which country you are in or what your specific situation is, so do not follow what I'm about to tell you without double checking everything, and make sure you stay within the legal boundaries. Have a location independent income, and then move to a country that does not tax this sort of income. There are plenty of those around. If you must set up a business, do so in a country where the taxes are extremely low, like Belize, and then do not live in that country or have citizenship there. Internationalize your lifestyle by setting up bases across the world. This means things like your finances, investments, and businesses are spread across multiple countries, ideally in the most favorable country possible. Do not live in a country of which you are a citizen. Get permanent residency, sure, but do not become a citizen. Be a citizen of a country where you do not live most of the time. This is just a small number of ways you can pay the least amount of taxes possible. So if you're serious about this, talk to a qualified accountant and sort it out. Paying little to no taxes plus a lowered cost of living means you have so much more disposable income, severely increasing your quality of life and the opportunities you have access to. Not to mention an increased budget for investing, which in the long run can make you very wealthy. Most people aren't aware of how much of an impact sunshine has on your health. A daily dose of sunshine makes you happier and healthier and likely to live longer. Living in a country where it rains and is overcast at least half the time really isn't my thing, and I'm certainly not the only one. This factor really is at the very least neutral to you. You can only win. If you like sunshine and you live in a sunny Western country already, move to another sunny, non-Western country. If you like sunshine and live in a rainy Western country, move to a sunny, non-Western country. If you don't like sunshine, move to a non-sunny, non-Western country, Armenia, for example. And finally, Moving abroad gives you the opportunity to experience new things, broaden your horizon, and generally become a more complete human being. By experiencing new cultures, you gain valuable insights into how other people live, what drives them, and you depart from your provincial and narrow point of view. You can grow as a person or become a completely new one. Life is about experiences, and you won't get a broad variety of those if you stay in the country you were born in. Life needs to be lived, and escaping the West is also about broadening your horizon, experiencing personal freedom, and seeing the vast array of opportunities that are available to you. Anyway, that's about all I've got for today. If you like this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching and see you in the next video.